All right, it is March 28, 2025. We are in the midst of a Canadian election in which immigration has not yet really been raised as an issue, but it definitely was prominent in the last several years in Canada. And we are joined today by Martin Basiri, who is part of a group called Build Canada, a organization that maybe you can explain in a bit, as well as your background, that has been lobbying in different areas across the different sectors of the economy and for changes to grow the Canadian economy. And that's why we're having you on. Martin is also the founder, I think you're the founder and former CEO of ApplyBoard, which is one of Canada's tech startup successes. Martin, thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me. I put a memo on Build Canada. Build Canada is a group of very successful CEOs and founders who they were like, we are completely in love in our country and we want to make Canada better. So why not just write what we think it should be done and we just putting the ideas out there completely outside of our political belief and just put it out there and say hey, in our opinion, since we are expert in this narrow or niche, this is what we believe, and just putting it for both parties to, or like in Canada we have multiple parties, all parties to use the pieces that they wish. There are a lot of work went through it. A little background on me: I came to these beautiful countries about 14 years ago to do my master's degree at University of Waterloo. I've given this opportunity since. I then immigrated to the US and immigrated back to Canada after almost 8-9 years. And basically, I co-founded a company called ApplyBoard. It's the world's largest online platform for international students to go to universities abroad. It's almost like all Western countries right now. And later on, 2 years ago, I started another company called Passage with a group of very successful people to um, to basically remove financial and information access from all the people who want to go abroad to change their life, but also to better align immigration, education, and the labor market. Um, and right now I'm here with you.
Yeah. I was chatting yesterday on the phone with the head of one of the designated organizations in the startup visa program. And I
Uh-huh.
said that you would be coming on the podcast, and they went, Martin's the poster child for the startup visa program.
Hmm.
Is that what you
Yeah.
immigrated under? Like, I think I mean, not to, for those who don't know ApplyBoard, I think it's a multi-billion-dollar company, isn't it?
Correct.
Is it one of the largest tech startups in Canada right now?
Um, I say it correct, but I hope the answer was wrong. The last time the company was valued 3.2 billion US dollar, around 4
Wow.
billion Canadian dollar. Um, Canada should have way, 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 way bigger companies, but unfortunately, it doesn't have. So your statement is correct. I hope that's not true down the road
Hmm.
for a $4 billion company.
Well, and
Hmm.
that's part of what we're talking about today is how whether economic immigration is bringing the best and the brightest. The counter argument, I guess, would be you, because you can't. What made you come back from America to
Hmm.
Canada?
So my wife Canadian, and the
Good
company
reason.
when I started Applyboard with my brothers, it was during the time that was President Trump also came to US. So
Mm,
either they had to come to US or I needed to come back to Canada. And our background, we are Iranians, so
Hmm.
there were a lot of hardship from that side. And then at the time, we were like, let's go Canada, and we applied for our PR through startup visa,
Hmm.
and
yeah.
we got it in 9 months. And we that made the company to be here. Company
Hmm.
has about over 1,000 employees in 30 countries.
Hmm.
It had a lot of ups and downs. We
Yeah.
raised raised over like 500 million US dollar over time, and basically created a lot of jobs in Canada and other countries. And so far, I was calculating, brought like more than $10 billion in tuition fee alone to Canadian economy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There may be another wave of the Iranian
Yeah.
exodus, for lack of a better word, to Canada, because I was reading in the news that under an executive order regarding terrorism, that Canadian citizens who were born in Iran are being turned back at the Canada-US border ahead of what's expected to be another travel ban, similar to what brought you from the US back here.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. I don't know. Like, there are a lot of things going on right now. Like, it's kind of like it's a last thing to be worried about right now. Like, see what is happening between US and Canada. Like, I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive.
Oh, it's super interesting.
The last 5 years has been a lot of experience. And I normally like smile at the problems, but like COVID was like once in a century experience.
Yeah.
And then the whole like invasion from basically in the Europe was something that was like for decades it was not happening in the Western countries. I think that brought another like thing that's like how vulnerable West can be as well.
Yeah.
I think after decades of stability and globalism, we are entering to volatility and more natural approach to economies. And I think both Canada and US is at the center of it. I think more than any other countries. It's exciting time because there are a lot of opportunities, and it's also different time. And I'm pretty sure as much as like a lot of good changes happen, unfortunately, it would be also some bad experience for immigrants, for Canadians, for Americans. And I hope this is, I don't think it has been even more important to have a great politicians in place than maybe now.
Oh, I agree.
For sure.
Completely. And great policies to
Correct.
like the current immigration minister, Rachel, this will be the first time I try to pronounce her last name, Bandayan, I hope I pronounced that right, said last week that the Trump policies, Canada should harness this to try to attract the best and the brightest people from around the world. And immigration lawyers across the country threw up their hands saying, through what programs?
Exactly.
Which is sort of what you're like. Then this brings us to your article, which was about attracting a talent-first immigration system strategy for Canada. Before we get into some of the like specific recommendations, what is the current scene in tech regarding immigration? Like, what are tech companies seeing?
So it was during COVID, it was a little hard because of a lot of the talent was applying remotely to work for US companies, and that became the trend. A little back, like US companies like pulled back, and the tech right now, I would say, except very top 5 percentile of developers, maybe 10 percentile, the pressure in the tech industry is not as much as it used to be. So immigration is not very hot topic among tech people in terms of like, oh, we don't have access to talent and stuff. That wasn't the case in like 2018 to 2022. 2018 to 2022, that was very harsh. And when like kudos to government because they came with this this basically global talent stream. That very fast we could have also bring people from overseas. Companies could bring software developers without going through all the LMIS stuff and that state. So we got to be fair to all the good things happen and all the bad things happen, and just like showing it as a fact. So I think that's a good gift from the government, a good policy for the that Canada way better than US in that stream right now, right?
But it sounds
Yeah.
like you're saying there was a mismatch, that there wasn't a huge skills shortage, and yet there was the creation of the policy to allow more
Oh,
permissive entry.
it was a huge shortage between,
Okay.
like, I don't know about this program from 2018 to 2022.
Right.
The last 2 years, because of
see.
a lot of tech companies laid off, and they're because of AI bringing a lot of
Right.
productivity, and the tech companies a little hold back. It hasn't been as big of a job shortage as it
Right.
used to be.
Okay.
Yeah. So I almost
But
forgot
very
about that
supportive of
period.
global talent stream. These are high earners, people over $100,000 salaries, that, like, a Canadian company not going to go through a lot of trouble to bring someone from overseas for these roles, like,
Interesting.
and there are also like a lot of things, like, for everyone that you hire, you need to hire 2 co-op people in Canada, which create a job for someone who's like first experience for the job. You need to hire, I believe, like 3 or 4 Canadian citizens. So actually, the program is drafted pretty well. Like, kudos to the people who made it. And then they check it, like, as you go to the next one. They're like, okay, did you hire your co-ops? Did you hire those things? So it's not like a low wage temporary foreign workers that, like, someone said, oh yeah, I want to bring all of my people from overseas, and then there's no accountability.
Oh,
This
it continues to
pretty
be
well, yeah.
super fast, that stream. Like we had a client like a month ago who had a normal LMIA where they had done recruitment that had been in processing for 10 months. And we said, you qualify under the global talent stream. Have you heard of it? And they said no. And within a month, the global talent stream application was approved. I think the stated processing time now it's still under 10 business days. And their other LMIA continues to be in process. Like that stream continues to be amazing.
Yeah.
What's not amazing, and maybe you can speak to, is going from temporary to permanent right now.
Yeah. So let's look at it. What is happening, right? Okay. So for those of your audience that they don't know how the total permanent residency of Canada works. So we have 3 major categories for becoming a permanent resident, either while you are in Canada or you're outside. Category number 1 is economic pathway, which is about 60%. It used to be almost 70% during the conservatives. Now it's around 60%. The goal is to be like about 65%, but like it has been around 60%, in some cases even lower. And then you have family sponsorship, like Canadian people get married, they want to bring their families here, or for example, someone want to bring their parents or grandparents, which is actually pretty limited. The number has been consistent over time. That's something around like 20% of the total numbers. And there's another 20%, which then it became a lot of problematic because the different shape of it created is like total humanitarians. It was 10% and then grown, and then the work visas came, a different form of it came, that it was not under the same mandate. And that's the whole, the refugees, private sponsorship, basically PR for the asylum seekers in Canada and everything else. So these are the different ways. One of the right things that happened, so the economic pathway, Canada is like one of the best immigration systems in the world. Historically, it started, and it was always like, it should be purely based on merit. Let's bring people that our country needs. Let's bring them people purely based on merit. This get the fraud out of the system. It hasn't been the best, but it is one of the best systems in the world, right? The system is roughly give like out of 600 points, there's 1,200 points, but for now, look at the first 600 points. It look at your age. Canada is an old country. Median age is 42 years old. We want to bring young and bright people who are going to have a good, prosperous future, but also longer time to pay taxes in Canada. So it basically give a lot of points to younger people, rightfully. It gives points for people who speak English and French fluently, and better you speak English and French is better. Points a little too high on that category, considering how fast people learn English and French after they arrive here. Depends on the province they are at it. The other one was the level of education. How much, of course, a PhD getting like more than like someone who is a high school diploma and so on. The worst problem in that this trading is you can be a master's degree from MIT or University of Waterloo. You are getting exactly same points if you studied from an online university in nowhere country that you never even attended a school or something, and they call it master's degree and you paid $300 to get a degree. So that's the most unfortunate part of it. And as a result, a lot of people that are applying overseas and they have access to lower quality institutions, they're getting much higher points in that category than the people inside Canada that we are seeing. And there is no yes, there are a lot of problems with our Canadian education system, but nowhere is printing you degree, right? You got to go, you got to attend the school, and we will talk about Canadian versus a foreign education. And then there is some points you have siblings here, and work experience is pretty important. You have Canadian work experience or foreign work experience, so on and so on. So government later on came and said, yes, but at the same time, our country, for example, right now need a lot of healthcare people. We should not say someone who have a bachelor degree in healthcare, for example, a nurse, and someone who is a bachelor degree in, for example, English literature, which at this time we don't have a job for them in current Canadian economy. We should create a category that says these two people are not same for Canada. Right now we need healthcare people, we need tradespeople, we need engineers, we need other category. And that's where it started from a good mind, but it unfortunately forked to be more political. And about a year ago, they said, oh, we need more French people. So knowing French, it has a lot of points already. But then they said, but if you speak French, technically speaking, the points, the way it's calculated, if you speak French and you are no skills, you are better than if you are a master's degree in computer science from University of Edmonton and making $150,000. And that's what Stephen is talking about. That, yeah, you bring the brightest people here, and then, I have right now in my company, someone had to take time off because to go and work, and these are 100,000 plus people to go and work on their language, and maybe they have to and I heard people that taking 3 months off to just go learn French.
Yeah, I've heard a number of these stories.
It's nuts.
It is nuts. In the time that productivity in Canada is a problem, we are, for the audience that you know, if I want to simplify it, we are prioritizing it. And no skill sandwich maker who speaks French better than a doctor, better than an engineer, better than a lawyer, better than a radiation technician that all hospitals look at it, better than anything. And in the volume, we bring more of them than all categories combined.
Yeah. So the data on this is as of March 21 in Express Entry, there have been 18,000, or I'm going to do reverse order. There have been 3 categories of draws. Provincial nominees, those chosen by the provinces, 2,833 draws. Canadian Experience General, 9,350. French language proficiency, 18,500.
And the first 2 categories, the first 2 categories are almost invariably people who have labor market attachment. They have job offers here in Canada. They, in the Canadian Experience class, they all have at least a year of Canadian work experience in an occupation, a high-skilled occupation. So it really, in the French language category, they don't need to have any labor market attachment or any Canadian work experience. We don't even know if they like it here.
They don't even need to use their French here. This is for people who they can't be going to Quebec.
Correct.
Like the idea, I had lunch with a consultant. They were like, this whole program is based on inviting Francophones with no connection to Canada to immigrate here and then not use their French.
Correct. So basically, and you could see, like, again, like in other categories, Canadian immigration in the last 4 or 5 years massively drifted to be a political than a pure economical and a needs of Canadians. And be even humanitarians, because when you dig into the humanitarians, like, it's also a system that is not truly built for the humanitarians, for the people who are vulnerable and who really need a refuge. Like, to give you a stat, 500,000 people, like to be exact, 457,000 people are in asylum seeker right now. And if you are a truly person that you really needed to apply through asylum seeker, like you are in, for example, because of your religion or your gender or something, if you go back to your country, you can be like killed, right? Or you like ran away from a cartel or something. You are a true case for asylum seeker. The way that the system is managed, even if you apply today, your PR don't come like at least for another 10 years, right? And this used to be a 2-year program. And still right now, we are looking for people last 2 years, but they have so many people applied that looking forward is going to take 10 years. And that's the current state of economy. And that's why 76% of Canadians are thinking immigration is has to get fixed again, right? It's something that, like I always say, if you go anywhere in the world and says, tell me about Canada, they tell you 3 things. Number 1, it's giant, it's big. Everyone learning geography. 2, they say it's cold, right? Canada is famous for being cold. 3, they said, we heard something about immigration. You go to a village in Vietnam, they say you these 3 things. You go to Russia, they say you about these 3 things. The first 2 is nature. We didn't have any choice on it. The last one is something that we were proudly built it. And unfortunately, that is also on a wrong path. So the only thing that we built it is not working right now.
No, and I have no idea where it's all going to lead. Just going back to like express entry, though, the other component that used to exist when you listed all those factors of age, education, work experience was if you had a job in Canada, which you'd think if the goal is to economically establish, having a job would probably be the most important factor, right? Like a job will help you economically establish. As of this week, points for that are gone across the board due to concerns about LMIA fraud, with certain LMIAs being bought for. As we've discussed on the podcast, because they are not great at combating fraud, points for everyone goes.
Yeah.
Have you had, like within the tech center, has there been any commentary on that? Like how there's no more reward for people who are here on the global talent stream?
Yep.
That's no longer a factor in whether they can stay permanently.
Yeah, I was like, hey, I don't know how to solve the problem. Let's remove the problem.
Yeah.
And it's not the problem is removed. It's just like, let's push it under the rock.
Yeah.
So in my article, I brought 2 points, because also like we are like a lot of the way that government looked at all these degrees and stuff is just by title. But the reality of economy is like we have something, like that's why every time always economy is measured by dollar, right? And I think the dollar value is more important than anything else, right? If you're Canadian, if we bring someone, we want to make sure we bring the people who have the highest impact in our society, right? I'm talking about economic class for now, right? Economic class, the rule for it is to have the highest impact on the GDP of Canada, to make our country more prosperous. In my article, I wrote, so median salary in Canada is around $60,000. I said, if someone make over $60,000, means they are the better 50% of the earners. Let's give them additional 25 points. And if they are making over $100,000, which is put them in the top 20 percentile, let's give them additional 50 points. This is 50 points out of 600. And also data shows that the people who studied in Canada, they are making over 2.5 times, the median wage is over 2 times all other immigrants. Meaning Canadian education doing a phenomenally better job of onboarding someone to Canadian economy than all the settlement services or anything else that government spend billions of dollars on. Okay, so let's reward people who are Canadian educated. And that's why we said let's give them additionally 80 points for studying in Canada, right? Why? Because tax report of all the immigrants in the last 20 years shows people who study in Canada are far more economically prosperous compared to the people who don't study in Canada. And it's for 3 things. Number one, normally when you come here, you're younger, you're more adaptable, you learn English better, you have to go learn it, you learn culture better. 2, employers are way better understanding what you studied and where did you go. So they have a sense that, oh, if you went to York University for, let's say, computer science, what does it mean? What's your quality look like? So they're more likely to give you an interview and hire you. 3, you created a network, right? Your friends went to different companies, and that's how you are basically getting absorbed to the economy better. So basically, by changing these 2 factors, massively our points goes toward helping people to more economic pathway. I have one more point for studies. I believe like our top is about like 20 schools, universities in Canada. Most of them they call U15, but like there are a couple of them, top research schools. For masters and PhDs, people on average make over $100,000 right after graduation. I believe we should just give them, for grad students in healthcare and STEM, we should immediately give them permanent residency. Why? Because, for example, our top universities, grad students, over 50% of them, they leave to US. Why? Because I was one of them. I was like, it's gonna take me a year to get green card and a year to get permanent residency. So let's just go there, at least get a green card, right? But if you say by upfront, don't go. Like if you go a PhD of computer science, University of Toronto, we'll give you a permanent residency immediately after your graduation. You don't need to go to uncertainty. We are talking about less than 10,000 people for the whole Canada, but at 10,000 people that are massively productive in economy. So they're worth more than tens of thousands of other categories.
You know what's interesting about, so kind of what you've been describing, which I agree with, is how the British Columbia Provincial Nomination Program works. So in BC, wage, and I've thrown this up on the screen for people watching on YouTube, there are specific points for wage, down to like, as you can see, there's a different points. You know, somebody earns $68 an hour, that's 53 points. $69 an hour, that's 54 points. And what's sort of interesting to me is that this is under an NDP government, right? So like, one may, just based on the different political leanings of the parties, have assumed that maybe a new Democrat government wouldn't have prioritized wage like this. Instead, it's totally done like that. And British Columbia also has direct to nomination for people who graduate with certain degrees. I think all PhDs are eligible for automatic nomination. Of course, the federal government this year cut provincial nomination programs by 60%, and British Columbia hasn't invited anyone in 2025 so far as they try to respond. In your discussions with people, and especially the feds,
didn't that also eliminate the international postgraduate, which was the direct to permanent resident stream?
So they increased language requirements for it and added a job offer requirement.
Right, exactly.
But again, since the cuts of 60%, everything has kind of been paused. In your discussions with different people about this idea of introducing this at the federal level, what's the reception been?
Positive. Like I have very good like a relationship and like a good experience. The people who work in our government, there has been like very good people. I don't like I believe we have very good public servants. People who work on it, like generally very good. I think the system really need to like be a lot of times is from the top. At the end of a story is a minister decision. So for this versus all the priorities to go top, when the ministers, like for example, during Minister Miller says French, now all of the conversations, great, everyone agrees to it, but it's parked because we've been told to just increase the number of French speakers. But
and that the way of avoiding fraud,
the mandate says economic pathway, you know. But Dana, sorry, you were like saying something.
No, just also that this approach, that the way to avoid fraud is to just eliminate any rewarding of a particular like of a job offer. That's the way to approach it. That has also been institutionalized, regardless of the fact that the actual job offer was an important way of evaluating somebody's labor market attachment.
I mean, because
the job offer was wrong way, and they should have get rid of it and replace it immediately with a wage. Because like we see it in the market that openly people are buying job offer and there's no accountability for the company who give the job offer, and they were selling it, and this was form of revenue for these small businesses to sell a sandwich, make your job offer, and the person doesn't even show up at work. It has to be replaced by last 1 year of your income. How much income did you report to the CRA? Because people know if they fraud CRA, it's a felony, right? So a job offer is piece of paper. To me, is how much money did you earn last 12 months when you are applying for your things? I think that's so. Remove all of, hey, let's remove paper, replace it with evidence. That was the right move. They only did the first part.
Mm-hmm. There was like one category, I mean, with the removal of points for LMIAs, which turned into all arranged employment. It's very bizarre that there's a specific work permit category called significant benefit, where IRCC has determined this person working in Canada will be significant economic, social, or cultural benefit. You would think that someone on that should get extra points or something towards permanent residence, but that they've gotten away with. What about entrepreneurs? Because right now there aren't really, startup visa program aside, I don't think there's any real programs right now. The provinces have some niche ones, but at the federal level, what do you think should be done there?
Yeah, I think at the federal level, the department just seems to be, they have never really come up with a viable way of assessing.
No, and they prohibit self-employment within the Canadian Experience class.
Yeah. So, so first I want to say how awesome is the startup visa, right? Let me give you some stat. If you look at like US, that we have a lot of like companies, the immigrants are about 10% of the population that like, but they're generating over 50% of unicorn companies. Unicorn companies are the companies that worth over $1 billion. International students is about 3 to 4% of all the population, and they generate over 25% of all of the unicorn companies. So it means an international student is 8 times more likely to make a $1 billion company. An immigrant is somewhere like around 4 times more likely to build a multi-billion-dollar company, which kind of makes sense. Like if you were risk taker enough to leave your safety and everything, go to another country, you probably are risk taker to like start a company, right? So they came like, and for people like me who graduated, who wanted to build a company, and your only way is to be employed by another person, you don't want to lose those people, right? In the US, we have two categories. One of them called O1 visa, that you can self-sponsor your own work permit. And you have another category, which both of them, you get it under 6 months, called NIW, Natural Interest Waiver, that you can prove to the government that I'm someone genius. I could be a great athlete. I could be a great actor. I'm a big singer. And in different categories, you need to show it, right? For example, I'm a big scientist. I have a big company. I just made a company, raised $5 million. US says, welcome to America. You know, like that's the type of Americans I want to have, right? And they completely have, and it was during President Trump, President Obama, President Biden. It never, ever gets politicized, right? There's so many things wrong with the US immigration, but when it comes to NIW and O1, they always kept the top people outside of all form of political factors. In Canada, we had a startup visa. What happened is, and it was a pilot program for 5 years. I was, I think, application number 10, most successful application that ever did.
Yeah.
And the whole goal is, when you build a company and you attract investors, like investors don't gonna invest in you because your visa is expiring in 2 years, right? Let's say you are a student. So the whole goal is like, within a couple of months, if someone is genius, let's give them a permanent residency so they can build a company here versus they go to US on O1 visa, right? And but unfortunately, and we were telling them as well, but they were all good intention. I don't believe it. No one had a bad intention or ill intention. So let's just want to make sure they put the requirements so low, and because startups is not like you're not gonna have $100 billion companies every year. Like that's why you call unicorn. You're not gonna have a lot of startups. So the expectation should be, I want to make sure this program give permanent residency to top 100 people every year, but you want to give that permanent residency in 4 months, right? You want the top people immediately there, but it should have not been thousands of people. But they wanted to scale this, but that what happened, it became a normal form of things, and then it went to the fraud. All these private incubators start charging people, and then as a result, government incubators started charging people $30,000 to $400,000 to issue something called letter of support, that people with that can go apply, and the backlog become 18,000 people, and they're giving about 1,000 to 5,000 permanent residency every year.
1,000.
No, it's 1,000. No, it's 1,000 was the goal. It's way more than right now. But then now the workload is 42 months. There is no startup gonna be that. Now what happened? The good ones, the whole program was like never lose a genius person. Now, in 42 months, you guarantee to lose the genius people, because no company can wait 4 years to get a permanent residency, because no investor gonna give you money if your permanent residency takes 4 years. Like, the biggest risk of any company is the founders can't even work legally.
Oh, I mean, we're like, we have people coming to us who are in the startup visa queue saying that their funding is all at risk because the investors are getting cagey about how long it's taking.
Yeah.
And whether the company would be viable. So would you have come you mentioned you had to choose between the United States and Canada, both at about a year. Startup visa at 40 months would have been a deal breaker for you?
Yeah, deal breaker immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's impossible. Like, you can't, like, founders of the company can't be, like, not have a status. And the rule is very simple. You might basically have to raise the bar to reality. I said minimum $400,000, and with two categories. If you raise $1 million for a Canadian incorporation, so it means investors give you $1 million, immediate, done, front of the line. But then the bar should be $400,000 and all these people should go away. All this letter of support from this organization or that organization, all of them should be gone. Let the market do what is real. If you have a good idea today, investors more than happy to give you $400,000. It's not that much money to build these tech companies. This program is built so we can have the next ApplyBoard, the next Shopify, next Vabi, and these companies, right? And $400,000 is very doable, very possible. They should like raise it. That's a minimum $400,000 and another tier of $1 million. And all these 18,000 people, they have to look at it immediately, ask them to reapply with that new category. And all this letter of support that people were faking, throw all those applications out.
Yeah. One, we recently had an immigration consultant on, and we were talking about Canada versus the US in terms of once you're an immigrant, how easy it is to have upward social mobility. And we were talking about how the CEOs of Google, I'm forgetting them now, but like many of the largest tech companies, Microsoft, are all, I think in those two cases, Indian Americans. I'm not sure where they were born. And he was saying that at least for immigrants from India, the perception exists that once you're here, it's much harder to be upwardly socially mobile than in the States. You would obviously be an exception to this, but do you think that you are the exception to this rule, or that that's not actually the case? And that
I don't think that's actually the case. I think, like, I love Canada. I love US. I'm both Canadian and American.
Yeah.
In both countries, kudos to our ancestors here. Like I say our ancestors, like I so feel Canadian, and I say our ancestors. Kudos to the people who built these two countries that made it that predominantly, like mainly, merit wins race, merit wins religion, merit wins gender. Yes, there hardship. Of course, like if I don't have connections here, if I don't speak English very well, like 10 years ago when I started my first company, I wasn't speaking as good of an English, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it's hardship. To this date, and I lived half of my life in last 14 years, most of it in the US, and almost half in Canada. Not a single time someone came and tapped my shoulder and says, "Hey, as a foreigner, this is your limit," right? And yes, you have people trolling you on Twitter and tell you go back to your country and this, but
Yep.
I don't believe that. I think this country is alive. Canadian and American dream is more alive than ever. We do have some problems, but this country is extremely rich, full of resources. And I believe, in fact, actually, maybe in Canada, you can even do better as an immigrant than in the US, because this is home. The moment an immigrant step foot here, you can, if you want, you can feel home and you can build here. Yes, sometimes government do some stuff, or sometimes some situations happen. I'm so pro Canada, so pro future of this country. You know, that's where I chose to live, between the two countries. And I think if an immigrant anywhere in the world want to like build the next Google, I think they should build it in Canada.
I think that might. Yep.
I was just going to ask, the issues that you've raised about how Canadian immigration policy has evolved, do you worry that these are going to change Canada's reputation internationally in respect of how people are going to regard Canada?
Ooh, that's a good question.
As a destination?
Yeah, so let's think about it mathematically, right? Why do people immigrate? Why do we need immigration at the first place? Okay, we need immigration because, like, I make it very simple for you. In 1990, we were 27 million people. And of 27 million people, about 13 million people were working. They were in the workforce, like almost half of the population. And we were, and the newborn per year was about 420,000 people per year, give and take. So 27 million people were making, or they having 400,000 newborn every year. Fast forward to 30 years later, we are 41 million people, only having about 300,000 babies, but our workforce went from 13-ish million to 20-ish million. Okay, so our population went up by 13 million, our workforce grown by about 7 million, but our newborn declined by 100,000, by about 25,000. Math doesn't lie. You can't fake math. You can't argue with math. So you can't have, and people around the age of 20, they join the workforce. So right now we are 25, people who were born in 2005, they're joining the workforce right now. In fact, from 2027, we're going to have a massive decline in domestic workforce, because 20 years prior to that, it was financial crisis, and the decline in new birth accelerated after financial crisis. So that's why Canada needs workforce, right? It's a median age of 42 and rising. It has a free healthcare. We need people to work. We need the country to be prosperous. So there's no argument here. Now, on the other side, all of the countries that they send immigration, they normally send it for two reasons. Number one, your growth of population and workforce is faster than your GDP and workforce growth. And as a result, people don't have a job. For example, across Africa, median age is around 17 years. Means 50% of the population is under the age of 17. There is not that many jobs created in Africa, and they're not as much of well-paid jobs. So these people need to get out. However, in the country, and as this country is going to a massive boom of GDP, these trends slow down. The number two is for people to move from point A to point B, quote unquote, immigrate, they need to have an upside. What does it mean? Means you are leaving a country that make $5,000 to a country that you make $50,000. You're not gonna that much move from a country that you make 35,000 to 50. That's why we don't have immigration anymore from Europe. That's why we don't have immigration from China. That's why we don't have immigration from Korea and Japan. Why? Because those countries' base became better, their population growth slowed down, but their workforce has grown. So there's a lot of jobs with good paying jobs. Compared to Canadian system, people don't want to immigrate. Now that is happening to India. Fertility rate is only 2.1. I'm not sure if you guys believe or not. India doesn't replace its population anymore. India is aging.
Like China.
So like China, that happened like 10 years ago. So the biggest economic factor of wealthy, well-educated immigrants are slowing. So it's not like in Canada, we have always the luxury of bringing educated people. That's number one. Number two, there are a lot of countries that now have offering the same thing as Canada does. Canada used to be one of the first countries like United States bring immigrant, but now this problem that we have in aging, almost all Europe, we have them. Japan has it, China has it, Korea has it, and now because their economy is similar, they can offer a lot of good incentive for people to move there. So you have less of a countries that they want to immigrate out and more of a countries that they want to immigrate in. It's extremely important because there's two things should happen. Number one, our immigration plan, we should think 100 years, not year by year, because we're not going to have an opportunity in 20 years to still bring immigrants to this country. Because other places catch up for the same reason. Africa become like India today, become like China today, right? So we have about 20 to 30 years to build what future of Canadians look like, not hundreds of years, right? Number one. So we need to sandbag. We need to bring a lot of young and bright people right now educate them, because in 30 years, you're not going to have anyone move from India to here. For the same reason, today, you're not going to be able to convince someone from Denmark to come to Toronto. For the same reason that you're not going to bring Italian stone, like a bricklayers to come to Canada anymore, right? So we have that shortage. And the other problem that we have is the policies are very short-term focused, extremely short-term focused. So when you're talking about reputation is problem number 5. Because the top people have options. And it's not only a problem of Canada versus US. Normally people compare to US. We have UAE now. Give you a 10-year visa, tax-free jurisdiction, free, safe, very stable politically, friend with everyone, right? You have countries like Singapore, Hong Kong, like you have Southeast Asia. Like today, a smart person have far more places to go than what it was 20 years ago. So basically, that is what is happening. The biggest problem that we have, the biggest challenge that we have, and doesn't matter if it's Poilievre or Carney or any other prime minister we're going to have, they need to think about immigration for a century. This is exactly the same time that we are like, we need to build our country post-World War II. This is the time, and in 70s, they built all of the highways in the US, and they were set for the next 50 years. This is the time that we need to build what Canada means in 2100, 2200 in terms of immigration and population and workforce. We need to build that right now. So we're going to be set for the rest of it. Otherwise, where else you want to bring people from?
Yeah, no, it's quite brilliant, I think. And the idea that really the brain trust is in the young people and then providing the education. So the whole idea, this is really the underpinnings of the Canadian Experience class. Come on a study permit, actually earn your way to permanent residency. But it's like the gate was thrown too wide open and it was just not well managed or administered. And then now there's this push to actually send people away. That, you know, there was an overculling. And so this is where I worry about the reputational thing, because it wasn't thought about in a clear, strategic way with long-term outcomes, as you said.
Correct. And we have one challenge that Canada never had that challenge before. We have 500,000 asylum seekers, which 75% of them, they were tourist visa. Something that media is trying to keep showing that they were students or workers. 75% came here with tourist visa and they decided to file asylum. And you have another 500,000 that they're Ukrainians and Iranians that they got humanitarian visas. So we have 1 million out of 2.8, 3 million all non-permanent resident status people that are I don't want to say no skills because I don't want to generalize it, but they were not selected necessarily based on like a skill set scenario. And now you have that also part of your system that you need to do something about it. So whoever want to now make a decision, they're not even starting from a blank sheet. They also have 1 million people that they need to address it. One way or another, there should be some policy about it, right? And like, for example, recently, both for Ukrainians and Iranians, they said, oh, we will renew your work permit, right? And then, but at the same time, you have the study permits, the postgraduate work permits. Someone went to Waterloo, graduated, making $100,000, work permit expiring. Like, what are we doing? It's say, let's push out all the productive people who have optionality, so then we can deal with it. That's what it seems like. And I hope that is not true. I really hope that is not the policy.
No, I saw a stat that over 1% of Canada's population now are just people in the asylum queue.
Correct.
Which is pretty crazy to think about. That this has been fascinating. I think that what you were saying about a long-term plan for 100 years, because Canada only has about 10 to 20 years left where we're a prime destination is one of the most insightful and thought-provoking things that I'm sure will lead to future discussions on the podcast. This has been super fun, Martin.
Thank you.
And I'm going to post a link to in the show notes to your article with Build Canada. For those who aren't only interested in immigration, there's topics on just about every topic relating to society up there. And I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, but thanks for coming on.
Yeah, for sure. So I have two thoughts. Number one, I believe we need to think about Canadian immigration purely non-political. And one of the things that both in US and Canada, we do it very well, non-political to some extent, is how central bank work, right? Central bank has its own mandate and they're doing it like what is best for the economy. And it has been like pretty stable. Some people argue with it, but at least there have been a lot of controls and the data published. I believe the number of immigrants that we bring per year, the type of immigrant and the scoring, all of them should be in an organization that is completely bipartisan and completely purely with a very clear mandate for the whole society, because immigration for Canada is an economic backbone of this country, and it has to be dealt like something economically. It's a mathematic. It's pure mathematic, right? That's number one. That's why my article also said, I understand that they want to do this humanitarians or this they want to do it. We should say that organization then should say, okay, we will budget 5% for the politicians to play whatever one they want to do, but not more than 5%. Today, if you're looking at it, we were just talking about it. Over almost 50% of the future, it's like all about this like more than 50% right now, like all these politicals or classes that is outside of the mandate. That's number one I wanted to say. The solution is we look at, you cannot solve a mathematic or economic problem with but with policies that are purely politically driven. It's very, very simple. It's best for me, it's best for you, it's best for Canada, it's best for our children. Number two, we talked a lot of like how things can get better, because we are experts and we want to like make better. I just want to end it with a positive note that this beautiful country is extremely rich. It has a lot to offer for a lot of immigrants and a lot of Canadians and all of our children. And it is extremely important for all Canadians and immigrants to participate in policies and the politics and do what is best for the country. I see a lot of immigrants, especially, like they lay back because they don't want to participate in what is right for the society because they don't feel they know about it. I just want to basically encourage everyone to never forget and never take this beautiful country as a granted. This is like a beautiful tree. If we don't take care of it, it's gonna go bad. So it's an out of us, and you can think 180 degrees different from what I think, but whatever you do, you need to vote, you need to participate, because the future of this country not gonna be guaranteed great if all of us individually don't do what is best for this country.
Hear, hear. That's awesome. I'm so glad I'm glad I reached out to you on LinkedIn. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much.